Hello everyone, this is Frank Demora and you're at the YouTube channel that I put up, the End Times Research Ministry. And this is where I connect the dots between Bible prophecy and current events. But if you just found my site, please take advantage of my newest book, the updated book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth. This is a documentary. It took me 36 years to do this book now. And what I wanted to do is to show you that if you don't know much about Bible prophecy, about the end times, this would be a great way in one hub to get all the information you're going to ever need to understand we're in the last days, based on the evidence, the documentation, and the proof. So, and it comes to you for free. My ministry is free. I never charge anyone for anything that I've ever done and never will. This is what the Lord's will is, and I'm carrying out His will. So in the process of what I'm doing, I connect the news compared to what the warning was from our Lord Jesus Christ. And I always start with His Word first. Then I'll show you the news, showing you how it's coming to pass, how the Lord's Word is coming to pass. So look at this. First of all, the Lord warns us that we're going to see a food crisis in the last days. And in Mark 13:8, the Lord tells us that these last days would end up like birth pains. And we know birth pains get worse and worse until the baby's delivered. And this is how the Lord illustrates to us what we should be looking for during the last days. Now, in Revelation chapter 6:6, the Lord told us about the food problem. Let me show you how He connects the dots between these food crises and what's going to happen, the balances of people who will be dying during the last days, as we see in the book of Revelation. And here is what it says in Revelation 6:6. And I heard the voice in the middle of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. Now, I've written about this many, many times over the years, but each year I'm pointing out Mark 13:8, the birth pains, the sign that is leading up to this food crisis, and we're seeing it again now. And just like I've done all the way back from 1976, going into, if you will, more current 2012, I told you what was going to happen in 2013, based on what I know from the Scriptures. And already we're only 15 days into the month, and we're starting to see this. Now let me connect to what the Lord shows us from Revelation 6:6, because we know that people are going to be working all day long for just a quart of wheat and just a little bit more than that of barley. So that shows us that if people are working all day long and are only getting a handful of food, something is taking the food out, causing the food crisis. Now we do know in our generation we're seeing what those conditions are that are causing people to starve, causing all these massive problems. But Revelation chapter 7 verse 16, the Lord gives us some more insights on what to expect during these last 7 years, of which the Antichrist will be ruling. And this would be the time period it would be called the tribulation period, of which the Antichrist will rule the world in his one world government. And this is what the Lord said, never again will they hunger. So we know for a fact, expect hunger. And we know now why. Never again will they thirst. So the sun is going to be beating down on the people. It's definitely going to have some massive effects on our crops and the water, because people we see here were thirsty. It says the sun will not beat on them or upon them, nor any scorching heat. So again, we know scorching heat is going to be coming, and this is the pattern that we've been seeing. You see a lot of news about global warming, of which I'm not going to get into the subject, is it man-made or whatever. I'm showing you the facts that every single year our globe is heating up, just like the Lord showed us. Now, further down into the Revelation, Jesus again gives us some insights about what He's talking about the sun. And the 4th angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and the sun was given power to scorch people with fire. So knowing that the sun will scorch people, obviously it's going to have more effects than just the people. It's going to have effects on the water systems. It's going to have effect on the crops. And obviously if that's the case, you're going to see shortages of food, which you can see when the Lord is talking to us about this food crisis in the way of Revelation 6:6. So if you're not going to like working all day long for one small meal just for yourself, not for your family, it's just going to be enough for one meal for the day, you're not going to want to be in the tribulation. And that you can avoid it by receiving Christ as your Savior today. Just ask Him to forgive you, and He will. He's waiting for you. Now let me get into the news now, connecting the dots. And what I'm going to do is show you some past news, and then I'm going to bring you to the current news. So we'll be bouncing back and forth, showing you what I told you to look for and what is happening now in 2013 in the first 15 days of 2013. So with that, let me go right over to the first item in the news, and you'll see it here. The news summary: grain prices rise on the export hopes. It says the prices of grains and beans rose as investors hope that the demand for exports from major buyers like China would pick up. Soybeans rose 3%. And here we go, wheat, just like I was giving you Revelation 6:6, wheat and corn each rose about 2%. They've been going up every single year. Mark 13:8, check it out for yourself. This is what the Lord told us. Now the prospect of colder temperatures in the northeast sent the price of oil higher. And of course, when that happens, you have less money in your wallet because you're paying out for heat. And when you have less money in your wallet because you want to keep warm, you got to start making decisions if you're getting into this middle class. Just take, for example, in the United States, the middle class is starting to move down into the lower class. And the poor, there's more people. You see much of that as we're leading towards now. We've already hit 47 million people on food stamps in the United States, and this is supposed to be the most prosperous nation in the world, and it's changing dramatically. But moving back into the weather, other energy futures also rose. The benchmark crude rose 58 cents to finish at $94.14 a barrel in New York. Then he goes on to talk the commodities of, obviously, the silver and the gold and the silver, of which Jesus mentions in Revelation chapter 18. Both of these are on that list of when the Lord will remove certain items, people will be crying, and gold and silver are on that. That's why I've been telling everybody to watch the prices of gold and silver, because they are going to go up. We've seen that happen. Just another indication that the Lord's words are coming to pass. Now, let's move on. This is another current article. Egg prices up 40%. And I've been warning about these things, and now here we are. They're writing about them. And people, I actually have people calling me a prophet, and I just tell them, look, I'm not a prophet. All I'm doing is I'm showing you what the prophets said, what Jesus said. I'm pointing to the prophets. So that's it. And the evidence will speak for itself from the Lord's warnings. All you have to do is know where to go to see those warnings. Now listen to this. The rising cost of corn and soya because of the bad harvest around the world. It's not just the United States. We're seeing global troubles. So around the world that has caused the rise in cost. Here you go, the birth pangs. Genetically modified soy has risen slightly, while the non-GM soy that many supermarkets insist on has gone up even more, because it costs more, obviously, to produce these kind of crops, and there's no chemicals and whatnot. And it's very interesting that the government is closing, in the United States at least. I'm not sure about Canada. If you know this, you can email me and give me that information and I'll post it. But the United States, our government is going into different stores, closing these health stores down, these non-genetic modified health stores down. And it's very ominous what's going on in the United States. It says almost 11 billion eggs are consumed in the UK every year. And that'll give you to the cost. But here's the bottom line. It says, but today, Just and the Morrison's offer, and this is the currency they're talking about here, the eggs, the average price of the value pack at the Big Fork 40% higher than it was in the start of 2012. There you go, prime example of Mark 13:8, the birth pangs of the food prices that we're seeing. All right, so let me go back to my site here right now, and you can see we've already covered the two. And now we're going to get into food prices expected to rise in 2013. Well, we're in 2013 right now, the first 15 days, so let's see what this has to say. And of course, there's a video with this, and again, when you go to my website, you'll be able to click the link and watch the video, but the news down here talks about the grocery prices are on the rise at the grocery stores according to the USDA. Corn, the drought. Here's one of those conditions that I was talking to you about. I've warned about it. I said it was coming. That came. And only because this is what the Lord said we should be looking for. And since I know that His Word never fails, I can tell you these things and expect it to happen because our God is real. And everything will be coming to pass that He warned us. So you got the drought, the fuel prices, the general inflation are affecting food prices at the grocery store. And don't think that this is just the United States. It's happening a large part around the world in different nations. For example, many of you may not know this, but the Arab uprising started because of food problems, the cost of food. And you saw those writings last year. So let's play the video and see what the news has to say about the food prices expected to rise in 2013.
Central News at 9. Good evening and thanks for watching. I'm Adam Uhernig. Sarah has tonight off. Food prices are going up. You might have already noticed the difference in your shopping cart and your wallet. And as I found out today, the higher prices could eat up your budget if you are not prepared. Corn prices, the drought, fuel prices, general inflation, and many other factors are affecting food prices at the grocery store. We did have decreased corn production, we had decreased soybean production, wheat production. You know, there's a lot of things worldwide that have gone on. The USDA says on average food prices will increase about 2 to 4% this year, on top of the 2 to 3% increases the country saw in 2012. Egg and dairy prices will also be higher as drought drives up feed costs. Plus the fact that through 2 years of drought, you know, we're starting to see a lot of cattle herds start to be liquidated just because of the lack of feed that's out there that they normally see from the southern plains all the way up into Nebraska. So there's a lot of driving forces behind it. And experts say the fresher the food, the more shoppers can count on its price going up, which is why sticking to your budget could be tricky.
I also like to think about, going to the grocery store, making sure that you have a list and sticking to that list. A lot of times, maybe at the grocery store, if we don't have a list, we're picking up a lot of kind of more expensive items that we don't necessarily need, and those can really add up on the grocery store bill.
Wells says also be careful what you're throwing away and check out the special deals.
Just kind of keeping your eyes open, watching those ads, and just being very aware of what you're spending at the grocery store.
All things to keep in mind next time you pick out your groceries at the store so you don't eat through your budget.
All right, so there's your evidence. You heard him say that it's problems around the world. It's not just in the United States. The third world countries are in huge problems as well, as a lot of the third world countries depend on the United States for food and exporting this food over to them, as the charities cut back because a lot of the Americans now are out of work. Over 47 million people on food stamps, and that number is rising, and more people are getting laid off. So there's a big burden on the United States, and it has a domino effect on the third world countries as well. So let's move back into my site here for a second. And we just covered the video here. And let's go to China's food prices expected to rise. It says experts forecast that China's food prices will face a new round of inflation. Amid unfavorable weather is one of the conditions that I was warning about. Of course, this is in my book where I outline these weather conditions and the changes that have been happening over the years, as well as the massive droughts, not just the United States or Australia or the Russia, but many places around the world. It says the weather and approaching spring festival, also known as the Chinese Lunar New Year, which will begin in February 10th. Data from the Ministry of Commerce showed that the average wholesale prices of 18 monitored vegetables increased 2.9% in the week December the 21st through December 30th compared with the previous week. Wholesale pork prices rose 0.9% in the same period. In addition to the chilly weather's impact on vegetable transportation and consumption, rush during the festival, the spring festival, will also boost the food prices. So, I mean, you're going to see a lot of news about the food prices going up in 2013. We're on that road. China, Canada, the United States, these third world countries, it's all happening. Now, let me go again back to my website. And you'll see there's a video that I want to play to just reinforce what's been going on. Crops are being destroyed, and I'll let this video speak for me.
Temperatures have been ridiculous cold for South Florida. We've been in the 20s almost every night this week out here. We survived a couple of the nights, but this weekend sort of finished us off as far as the sweet corn and the green beans go. We lost probably, at this point, 150 acres of sweet corn and about 36 acres of green beans. Probably right now with the current price of beans and corn, you're looking at somewhere around $750,000. This one field's probably over $100,000 of potential sales. So there's no insurance this time of year either on sweet corn, so it's really a total loss. We haven't seen a stretch of cold weather like this in decades. And this field should be a bright green color right now. And as you can see, it's not.
All right, so again, more proof just to show you. If I was in a court of law and I kept showing you this circumstantial evidence leading to exactly what Jesus said, you would, as the jury, would have to make a determination whether what the Lord told us was the truth or not. And I know for a fact, because I've spent so many, thousands of hours researching and following over these years, these past 36 years, so I know without a shadow of a doubt that what the Lord has warned is coming to pass, and it's happening in our generation. And all of the things that He promised that we were going to see are happening in one generation, and that's ours. Now, let's go down to why 2013 will be a year of crisis. See here, now this came out early. As I said, I was going to be bouncing back and forth, but since we're into 2013, I wanted to show you what they were talking about, what was going on in 13, because you already just saw now, if 15 days into it, they're worried about the corn and they're worried about the wheat and global implications. So let's go down and see what it says. Prediction in 2013 will be the year of serious global crisis. That crisis is predictable, and in fact that already begun. It will incessantly confront the next president of the United States. Yet emergence crisis got not a mention of the Republican National Convention in Tampa. And we'll see if the Democrats do any better. Keep in mind, this is a little bit older article. The crisis originates in this summer's extreme weather, of which I told you was coming, and it came. Almost 80% of the continental United States experienced drought, of which I told you was coming, and it came, according to the Lord. These drought conditions, Russia, as I mentioned, and Australia experienced drought as well. And in 2013, they're on fire again, as I showed you last week. The drought has ruined key crops, just like I told you many, many times in my post. Email Frank or Google Frank DeMora. Crops will be destroyed. See what you come up with. The corn harvest is expected to drop to the lowest level since 1995. In just July, prices for corn and wheat, again, remember what the Lord said in Revelation 6:6, jumped about 25% each. Prices for soybeans about 17%. They're talking about 2013 now going up again, just like you saw earlier. These higher grain prices will follow through the higher food prices. And for consumers in developed countries, higher food prices are a burden. But in almost all cases, a manageable burden as of right now. But as we get closer into the tribulation, it's going to get a lot worse. Americans spend only about 10% of their after-tax incomes on food of all kinds, including restaurant meals and pre-packaging foods. And of course, if you want to do a study or a research about restaurants, you're going to find out that people have cut back going out because they can't afford it. And so this has been hurting the restaurant businesses. Surveys for the Gallup find that the typical American family is spending 1/3 less on food today, adjusting for inflation, than in 1969. But step outside the development world and the price of food suddenly becomes the single most important fact of human economic life. And that's what I told you about the Arab uprising. That's what they're talking about. In poor countries, people typically spend half their income on food. And by food, they mean foremost bread. Now I'm going to let you go down a little bit more here because we're talking about Egypt now, and how the disc of round flat bread cost a penny. In later 2000s, however, Mubarak's government, which is now gone, Mubarak was cast out, and found it could not keep pace with the surging grain prices. And they give you these grain prices down here. You should really take a look. Go to my website, click on the link, and you'll see what they're talking about, because they're going on. As Egypt's population doubled from 20 million in 1950 to 40 million in 1980, and now more than 80 million, Egypt has gained first place as the world's largest wheat importer. This is bad news. And this is one of the reasons why the prices of wheat is going up. And I believe that the Lord, when He warned us about the wheat and the barley, that was for a reason. And many people around the world are depending on this staple, and it's getting more extreme than cost. So with that, you can, once you go to my site, and I'll have the link there, you can click these individual videos here, and it'll give you more information about the drought and what's going on with these prices. But the bottom line is, what the Lord had warned is definitely coming to pass in these last days. All right. So now let's go look at the next article. Bring this up for you. And you'll see this article is entitled "Food Price Crisis Signals Imminent Hyperinflation." And this was only a couple days ago. This was January the 14th of 2013. It says, Jeff Nielsen attempting to decipher the global picture regarding food prices, food inventories. The food production is not akin to navigating a labyrinth. A deluge of misleading propaganda and short-term noise from the mainstream media means anyone attempting to decipher these parameters is likely to encounter a plethora of dead ends and wrong turns. Now, those following agricultural markets and agricultural prices have seen two general trends emerging over the past decade: rapidly rising normal prices and steadily falling inventories. And what did I say 100 times? When you have less inventory, the price shoots up. This is a byproduct of what we're going to see, or what you're going to see in Revelation, and be part of that Revelation 6:6 if you don't receive Christ as your Savior. But when you have the falling inventories, the prices go up. This flies directly in the face of the most basic of all supply-demand fundamentals. Yes, falling inventories are supposed to lead to higher or rising prices. However, those rising prices are then supposed to naturally lead to both falling demand because of higher prices and rising supply because of higher prices, with the rebuilding of the inventories an inevitable result. Yes, despite the largest price spike in the price of agricultural commodities in 40 years, inventories remain depressed. All right, so if you do the search and you're watching, get outside the main. Let me get rid of this. I'm sorry about that. Outside the main news sources, you're going to find out the real truth. And critical stock-to-use ratios remain close to multi-decade lows. So why has the global economy, and again, this stupid thing keeps coming up, excuse me, increased to suspend the basic supply-demand stimuli? Because our subsidies-saturated global agricultural model is absolutely broken. They're paying people... they're paying farmers not to grow anything. They're giving them billions of dollars. Here's a chart that you could take a look at. It's talking about the cereal production, utilizing in the stocks. But there's definitely a major problem. The bottom line is this: the food prices are going up, and it's happening just like Jesus predicted it was going to take place in the last days. Now here is another article. It's called "The Global Food Crisis Will Worsen as Heat Waves Damage Crops, Research Finds." Let me go to this one. See a picture of it here. It says on the subtitle, "Harvests will fall dramatically during severe heat waves." Remember with the Lord I showed you earlier about the sun, the signs in the sun? Well, they're talking about it. Predicted to become many times more likely in the coming decades because no one is doing anything to stem the global warming. And at this point, I would say, according to what I know from the Bible, nobody's going to stem it because the conditions are going to get worse, because that's exactly what the Lord said. So it says the world's food crisis, where 1 billion people are already going hungry, and a further 2 billion people will be affected by 2050, is set to worsen as the increasing heat waves, byproduct of what I've told you, what was going to be raising the food many, many times over the last 4 years. Heat waves reverse the rising crop yields even over the last 50 years, according to the new research. Severe heat waves, such as those recently seen in Australia, which I've covered already, are expected to become many times more likely in the coming decades due to the climate change. And last week I posted the new study that the officials were warning that these were the conditions that were going to arise in the coming years. And now there's other news talking about the same thing. Extreme heat led to 2012 becoming the hottest year in the U.S. on record and the worst corn crop in 2 decades. New research, which was used corn growing in France as an example, predicts losses up to 12% for maize yields in the next 20 years. Like I said, it wasn't just the United States, but they're seeing this in the European Union as well. A second longer-term study published on Sunday indicates that without action against the climate change, here, look at it again, Revelation 6:6, about the wheat and soybean harvest will fall by up to 30% by 2050. And I'm telling you this, I don't believe you're going to have to wait until 2050. You're going to see it a lot faster than that, because you think you've seen extreme weathers now? Wait until you see what's coming. Our research rings alarms bells in the future food security, said Ed Hawkins of the University of Reading, who worked on the corn study. Over the last 50 years, developments in agriculture such as fertilizers and irrigation have increased yields of the world's staple foods, but we're starting to see a slowdown in yield increases. And as you can see, there's a lot of information down here, and I would suggest you read the rest of the information. But the bottom line here is this: everyone that I know of that I've been watching, these officials, they're warning that there's a crisis coming. We're already in a crisis. And a lot of people are warning of dire circumstances with the weather as more heat waves coming. And again, I assure you that will be the case, because that's exactly what Jesus Christ told us was going to happen in the last days. Now we know that the water issues, because the Lord showed us that people were going to be thirsty. And so there are many water issues, as you're going to see here, as I'm going to point out this one right here. And this has to do with the Great Lakes. And you'll see this was a couple days ago, January the 14th, and it's talking about the new water lows for Great Lakes could drain local economies. So take a look at this. It says Chris Berkeley makes his living plying of the often treacherous waters of the Great Lakes, delivering staples like cement to industries nestled in the myriad harbors that dot the coastlines that's equal to nearly half of the circumference of the globe. It's not glamorous work, but it's critical to the U.S. economy, and it's getting harder. Here you go. Water levels like Lake Michigan and Lake Huron fell to record low levels for December and are expected to break all-time low sometime in the next few months. And I'm telling you what's going to happen here as the sun heats up, generates and pours out the heat on America and the rest of the nations around the world. The scorching heat that Christ was talking about, it's going to evaporate much of the water around the world. The glaciers are melting. We're seeing the salt mixture in the oceans that are now starting to rise because of these massive glaciers. And but we're starting to see evidence of the sun having a major impact on the water systems and water. And just like the Lord promised, that and he showed us in his word that people were going to be very, very thirsty. Read again Revelation chapter 7, if you will. So let me go again back to my site and play some videos for you, show you it's not just happening around New York. Check this out.
Right there where that green buoy is by that empty fleet.
Tugboat pilot Larry Rao is pointing to one of the new danger spots along the Mississippi River. A buoy marks an area where a barge recently hit a rock. The river here is so low, cargo loads have been cut so barges don't hit the bottom.
We're under 50% capacity right now in just the low water conditions we're facing right now, and it continues to fall out.
You really get a sense of how low the Mississippi River is here in St. Louis, just underneath the arch here. Decades ago, the Army Corps of Engineers installed this gauge, which shows the depth of the river. Here you see the number 2, that's 2 feet. Now, normally, all of this area would be completely underwater. The gauge extends all the way up to that sign where it says negative 3.4 feet and falling. That's what the F stands for. That's where we are now. They expect the river to continue to fall.
We think it could easily go down to -5 feet, and that's, a foot and a half below where it's at right now.
South of St. Louis in Thebes, Illinois, is where the levels are the most dangerous for navigation. A 6-mile stretch of the river here has been closed during the day while crews clear rocks from the channel. Besides clearing debris from the river, water from a lake in Illinois is being drained into the Mississippi. That should add about an inch to the river. There's also a push for water from the Missouri River, something that's never been done, but something should be, given the extreme conditions.
It's very serious. It could stop commerce, especially if we don't get a little relief out of the Missouri River.
George Foster has been working on the river since 1964. He thinks water from the Missouri is essential.
We're not asking for all our water, we're asking for a little of it.
All right, I'll let you watch the rest of it when you go to my site. Click that. Very interesting information. Now here's another one that I'd like you to watch.
Planet. At Haydell's Bakery, almost everything begins and ends with flour.
All of our commodities, including flour, have been rising slowly.
Ingredients that are crucial to making these products and others, potentially impacted by the low level of the Mississippi River. Up near Lake Providence, the situation is grim, with 13 barges half-loaded with grain that can't get out, according to Louisiana Agriculture Commissioner Mike Strain.
It's $250 million worth of grain at the Port of Lake Providence alone, and guess what? We can't move a barge.
They said, we'll bring in trucks. Take 7,000 trucks. They don't exist.
In order to get through the lower river levels, some of the barges will have to take on smaller loads. That adds to shipping costs, which in turn could affect the prices that consumers pay down the line.
What does that do when you short load a barge? Who pays for that? The farmer, and who ultimately pays for that? The consumer. The consumer pays for that.
All right, I'm going to stop it there because he makes a good point, and it's the point that I've been making. There's a lot of different reasons why prices are going up, but when you really look at them, they're connected to the sun, they're connected to the weather, they're connected to storms, massive storms. There's a lot of different variables that are causing the higher food prices, and a lot of people don't even know that. So what I have now, and this is, I'm going to close, there's a video here that you really need to see, and it talks about 2012. It gives you a synapse, if you will, of Matthew chapter 24, when the Lord said, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door. And they're talking about the heat and the drought and the fish that are dying. Very, very good as a closer to what I'm trying to show you, pointing to the Lord Jesus Christ. Let me just give you a teaser.
From human emissions of greenhouse gases, the rate of sea level rise has accelerated, and it's expected to continue doing so. Dr. Strauss.
In the long term, we are likely to see many feet of sea level rise and be forced to redraw the map of the United States.
I'm just going to move it up so you get a glimpse of what you'll be watching.
In the course of the last few hours. Much of the Northwest is getting battered this Sunday by 3 fierce storms in a row, with another one on the way tonight.
One other one that we know of in recorded history that developed closer to the equator, but this is a monster storm.
Survivors say they've never seen anything like Beaufort before.
.3 earthquake has struck off the eastern coast of Japan.
There's a little teaser for you, but please, I plead with you, all of you, whether you're already a Christian or not, I'm asking you to take my book, which I give to you for free today, a free download by going to my website. Click the link. Read the material. It will show you, if I was a lawyer and I stood in the court, I would present all of this information. And I know, because I've seen hundreds and hundreds of people personally, but now I'm getting reports from the people from different countries that I gave my book that are taking the book out to different places like Haiti and Kenya and Australia and China and Brazil. I mean, all over the place. And people are coming to the Lord because they're seeing what the Lord told us to look for is happening. The word of the Lord is the truth. And I'm going to prove it. Not that the Lord needs anyone to do it, but I want to show you this to encourage you that you're running out of time to receive the Lord Jesus Christ before He takes His church away. The Lord loves you and He's waiting for you. Please run to Him today for this salvation. This is Frank DeMora reporting from the Last Chronicles of Planet Earth. God bless.